Welcome, ladies and gents, to the Live Free Now show, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. This is Live Free Now number 60. So if you're watching live, I invite you to interact with the show, to share some comments, ask some questions, give us some of your stories. And if you're listening after the fact, you can comment there on the web post if you're listening to the podcast for the podcast audience. Today, we're going to talk about victimhood and empowerment, right? And we're going to juxtapose the two. And I want to make the case that what we focus on and how we choose to show up in the world really largely impacts the life that we live, okay? And there's this dichotomy, when things happen to us, when crap happens, life happens, problems happen, there's struggles, we can choose to show up as a victim to these things, or we can choose to be empowered and leverage them as opportunities for growth. So I want to share some insights on that. And the reason why this was coming to me today, I hadn't done a podcast, I think, this whole week. And it's because I've been busy. I've been hustling. Lots of good things are happening. There's lots of growth taking place in the Freedom Cell Network. My business, My Brave Botanicals, is doing great. And I recently started crypto consultations, and those are growing great too. And I'm adding a whole lot of value to folks. And so I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about. I wanted to get something out. I wanted to keep in touch with you guys. And I started thinking one of the reasons why I hadn't done so many podcasts this week was because I've been focusing a lot of time on these consultations, helping people with crypto stuff. And then I was kind of realizing wow, earlier today, I was like, this is great. This is going really well. If I needed to, if Kratom were to be outlawed or that business were to fail or something, I could just pivot into full-time crypto or other endeavors, right? And it's that state of empowerment that I think really enables us to live our best lives, okay? On the flip side, conversely, far too often there's folks that just stay in this constant state of victimhood, right? I don't want to downplay terrible things that happen to people, and some people's struggles are more real, and some people have difficult upbringings, right? But when things happen, to stay in that state really serves to manifest more of that which you're concerned about. That's what you're worried about, those negative aspects of life. So I want to convey to people that the more we feel empowered, the more we focus on our goals, the more that we focus on that which we are grateful for, right? Compared to the more we focus on scarcity or our lack of things or the stuff that really brings us down in life, we're going to manifest more of that. And so we have the choice to show up and focus on those good things in life to bring about more good things in life. All right. So I want to invite you to subscribe to the podcast here at livefreenow.show. A quick example of this phenomenon is big tech has been censoring, and there's a lot of old school activists, conspiracy pages, and groups that have just been brought down by Facebook, especially people's YouTube accounts that they had monetized and they were earning a living, right? So when that happens, the reason I'm bringing this up is because stuff gets censored. Derek Bros' channel got censored. I want to invite you to subscribe to the podcast, so at least we have more control there. But when this type of thing happens, people's livelihoods are just taken away. There's two ways you can show up. You can, of course, everyone's going to be upset and angry at first, but you can wallow in it. You can feel victimized by big tech and old Zuckerberg and Alphabet, Google, and you could just stay in that state and you're all pissed off and you're attracting more negativity and you're focused on what you don't have anymore, right? Or on the flip side, you can feel empowered. You can say, what am I going to do about this? I'm going to go set up on Library, BitChute, going to grow my podcast. I'm going to start my own broadcast, my own stream, right? It's all about how you show up. So subscribe to Live Free Now show. And the Live Free Now podcast is doing great, and I'm starting to interview people again, which I'm super excited about. I've done podcasts and radios, shows and stuff like that for quite some time, and I'm stoked to start interviewing people again. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock Central, I'll be interviewing Howard Lichtman of the Thick Red Line. He also wrote, I forget the name of it, something about our slavery or something, this great book that has all sorts of info about conspiracy and voluntarism and the true nature of government. So that's going to be Friday. And then the Monday after that, I'm interviewing James Corbett at 7 o'clock. We're going to be going live on that. And then on Wednesday, I'm interviewing Joe Quirk. I'm going to talk a little bit about seasteads here in a second. And then I have Foster Gamble coming up January 7th. So definitely tune in for that stuff. It's all going to be good, great stuff. While we're here, I'm going to tap in real quick to the D Live audience. We are streaming live on D Live as well. Looks like there's 8 folks watching over there. So we'll try to keep up on the comments there as well. Okay, so one of the contexts that I'd like to talk about this is how we can live free, right? There's all sorts of areas where this phenomenon, victimhood versus empowerment, comes into play, with wealth, with your quality of life, with your relationships, and with freedom, right? As an activist, as an anarchist, I'm very concerned with a lack of freedom, with tyranny coming down at the federal level, with all this conspiratorial stuff taking place, with supranational governments and great reset stuff. Okay, so again, 2 choices: victimhood or empowerment. We can focus all our time researching and listening to all these depressing podcasts and being really negative and angry about it when we talk to people about it, so they don't take us seriously, or we tarnish some of our relationships because we've been banging on the New World Order for the past 10, 20 years, and we've been doing it in a nasty, negative way, rather than approaching people more gently and meeting them where they are, like our family and stuff. Or we can be empowered and we can say, yes, we understand that there's tyranny at the federal level, the state level, the local level. Yes, we understand, in fact, that this COVID situation has escalated that tyranny tenfold. But at the same time, now we can leverage that phenomenon and use it to empower us so that we can manifest freedom in our lives, right? Whether it's freedom cells, for example. Perfect example. Conversation was taking place. Derek Grosz shared this poll and he said, how is your inner cadre or your middle cadre, which are like the small freedom cell groups, how are you guys preparing for the COVID immunity passports, or having to prove that you have a COVID vaccine or immunity in order to fly? How are you prepared? And the question was like, I'm not prepared at all. I'm very prepared. Bring it on. I need more time, right? Most people chose I need more time. And so I brought this conversation and this question to the Texas Freedom Cell Network Telegram group, and we started having a conversation. And my buddy Kurt, he's just like, man, they formed a working group and they're like, let's explore ways that we can circumvent this and get around this. Maybe the Freedom Cell Network chips in and certain persons get like these timeshare things for private charter jets. Maybe there's a private jet owner or a charter flight pilot in the network, right? And then the ideas started just blossoming as well. Maybe we can all chip in and have an RV that the community uses in Texas to drive if we're not going to fly, right? Vans, whatever. And now there's people that are actively working on it because they feel empowered, okay? A whole nother step on empowerment too. You can be in victimhood and you're like, man, I only fly commercial. I can't afford a private jet. Maybe that's what some of you listening to this podcast, this video, thought in the back of your head. I can't afford a private jet. That's ridiculous. That's what all like the rich dirtbags do. But then another level of empowerment is like, okay, yeah, I can't afford that now, but I really don't want to be subjected to all this tyranny when you fly. Already with the pat downs, we're already there. But now I guess there's a line that's been drawn with the whole vaccine thing. And so I'm going to choose to accelerate my wealth plan. I'm going to launch that side hustle I've been thinking about all the time. I'm going to go see what it costs to be able to fly private. I don't fly that often. Maybe I can partner with some people, whatever. It's all about empowerment. It's all about being empowered. So they went out and they started that group, and now they're making stuff happen. On the flip side, speaking of COVID again, I mean, when it comes to businesses, when it comes to the government lockdowns, right? Like, this is terrible. This is reprehensible, you know, but there's this philosophy of like acceptance. It's a self-improvement tool, right? Accepting things rather than resisting them and causing even more pain and strife. That's something that I had to go through when I went through a divorce. I mean, that was like with 2 kids. It's like, oh my God, how could this be, right? How could I let this happen? But then when you accept it, right? You don't have to be excited about it or think it's the great thing or not be hurt still, right? Or have negative emotions, but you accept it and you stop resisting against it and you accept it and you think, okay, I need to process some stuff, but where am I going to go from here, right? And so there's been a whole trauma that's being brought down from whether you think the virus is real or not, right? Assume that it is real and that there are people, there's excess deaths, although there was something from Johns Hopkins recently just debunking the excess deaths thing. I need to look more into that, but the virus really sucks. What also really sucks, or maybe it doesn't suck and it's just a total con, but what also really sucks is the lockdowns, and they're causing immense irreparable harm in many instances. Okay, so we just need to accept that that's where we are. That doesn't mean that we are passive. That doesn't mean that we're slavish, right? We just understand that's where we are. So then the question is, what are we going to do about it? In the freedom sense, are we going to be pissed off? Are we going to turn off our family? Are we just going to pout and grovel about it? Or are we going to go resist? Are we, I said not to do resistance. I guess I'm like metaphorical resistance, but then resistance is in, we're not going to comply. We're still going to be free. We're going to keep our business open, right? We can choose to be empowered. And then on an individual business owner sense, or you lost your job or an employment, two choices. Victimhood. I can't believe this happened. This is the worst time right now. What am I going to do? I'm going to get my government checks. Forget it. I'm just so jaded with it all. I don't have the energy. I'm depressed. I don't feel like waking up. I don't feel like doing calls to try to get a new job because I don't want to be denied again. I just don't think I could take that, right? That's victimhood. Or, you know what? I am a capable human being and this job didn't work out, but there are other jobs out there. And in fact, I'm going to make a job for myself, right? That's why entrepreneurship just goes so much in line with manifestation and empowerment, you know, because you have so much freedom to take it as far as you want it. And there's all these businesses and folks that are pivoting, right? One example, when I went to the Jack Spirko 2020 Survival Podcast workshop, man, it was a great group of people that participated in that event. And they were all empowered to varying degrees, right? And I met this guy that he learned about microgreens from another Spirko workshop or something. And he's like, hey, I could do that. So he started growing microgreens at his place and he was selling them to restaurants. Well, all the restaurants shut down, right? So victimhood would be like, man, can't believe the restaurant shut down. I shouldn't have gotten involved in this business. I'm all depressed. I don't have the energy now because I'm all depressed and my mind's all jacked up to go make stuff happen, right? You create more of that. When you focus on what you're lacking, your business, the struggle, then you create more of that. But instead, if you're like, man, there's a lot of opportunity out there. And like Homeboy, he was like, I'm just going to go take it direct to consumer and they're going to come pick it up from my house, right? It's all about the pivot. And if you're in a state of victimhood, you're not going to be creative. You're not going to have energy to go take massive action that's necessary sometimes in order to be successful in entrepreneurship. And if you're empowered, you're going to go get some stuff done at any cost, right? If you're an employee too, and maybe owning a business or running a business isn't your thing, you can go out there and you can share your skills, right? And you know, that's one of the problems that I have a lot with a lot of the folks that have more left-leaning philosophies and like equity and social justice type stuff. Not that those are bad things in and of themselves, but there's a lot of victimhood that I perceive coming from democratic socialists, right? And it's like the victimhood, and they have the scarcity mindset that there's only a set amount of wealth or money that can be had. And when other people have a lot of money, and then it means that I can have less. And, oh, the business owners and the capitalists are just so evil and mean. You know, one thing that I would say to that, you can be victim, you can be anti-capitalist and whine about it, right? Or you can say, you know what? I think capitalism is flawed. This is not what I think, but this is what the socialists think. I think capitalism is flawed. It's unethical. It's exploitative. It's harmful. So I'm going to go out and prove that there's a better way to organize businesses or social organizations, right? Wouldn't that be more empowering? And then you could be like, see, I told you capitalism was terrible. Look at this horizontal cooperative that me and my buddies made, and we're doing super great. So when it comes to the COVID stuff, it's really, you know, put it on big time, the victimhood versus empowerment. It's amplified. COVID has a tendency to amplify all sorts of stuff and accelerate all sorts of trends as well. So in this particular type of environment that we find ourselves in, which is a very difficult environment to navigate, the victimhood versus empowerment dichotomy is all the more important. And you have a choice. That's in the name of the title. You can choose how you are going to show up in this world. And we may not have control over external circumstances like the family we were born into, or somebody was born into a war, right? But we do have control over how we perceive that, how we feel, how we think about all these things and what we do about it, right? There's this guy named Viktor Frankl. I was thinking in my head, there's multiple soundtracks that go on in my mind when I'm doing these podcasts. Sometimes it throws me off, but I was thinking in my head when I said the war, like, wow, your circumstances are pretty damn bad. And that's perhaps the worst experience. Or if you're like in shackles or you're enslaved, then it's really hard to be empowered and do the whole law of attraction stuff, right? But then I just now thought of Viktor Frankl. If anybody's familiar with the story, this guy, I think he was a teacher maybe, but this guy was in a concentration camp in World War II. And his family died. And like, I don't know if he saw them or they're in the same camps and stuff. His family's dying. And he just had this realization that like, wow, I may be enslaved my physical body, but I'm in control of my mind here. And he decided to be positive, and he decided to teach people and empower people and share that bit of hope and bliss with the fellow folks that were in the freaking internment camps. And he ended up surviving to tell the world about it and empower and inspire so many people. So even in those most dire of circumstances, right, when you want to make a point, sometimes you take it to an extreme. Even those most dire circumstances, you can choose to show up like freaking Viktor Frankl did. I learned about him in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is an incredible book. If you haven't read it, it'll help you in your business and your relationships and your activism, everything. And one of them is be proactive. And he tells the story of Viktor Frankl and the time between stimulus and response. There's this magic area where we get to choose how we're going to show up. Between stimulus, something happens, you're fired. This is on a bigger scale. And then response. And we can take that and run with it. Okay. Another thing I want to talk about is like, I talk a lot about the Great Reset. We're well aware there's tyranny, centralization. It's getting worse, right? And so we can be victim. We can whine about it. Another victimhood thing is kind of like dependent on other people to fix things for you, right? If you're empowered, you're going to take your life, you're going to take your community, you're going to take matters into your own hands. This kind of like lower resonance, I guess, would be going to vote and expecting another human being to solve your problems for you. And even a victimhood, like in a state, it's like, oh, we're stuck in this government paradigm. So you can show up on a big scale as a victim or as an empowered person when it comes to the type of society we're going to have. The victimhood is wallowing, whining, focused on how terrible government's getting, right? Studying the New World Order till you're blue in the face. And the flip side is, well, what if we created floating islands? What if we created seasteads, right? What if the government's going to control all the land? What if we go try and explore the possibilities of having housing and structures out in the sea? Or what if we worked with governments to create a free private city where a company or a private organization runs the city and there's immense freedom, and the relationship between the person, the resident, and the company that runs the city is a contractual voluntary arrangement, right? Or what if we like go all Elon Musk and go settle on Mars without government reach, right? Or what if we create a decentralized peer-to-peer mutual aid group where small groups work together in order to engage in mutual aid, in order to engage in mutual defense, and in order to achieve common goals, benefiting one another? And what if we just start pumping on that idea, doing it in our areas, sharing it with people, and eventually that grows to over 7,000 people, which is what we're doing with the Freedom Cell Network, right? So you see, again, the dichotomy: victimhood, inaction, depression, frustration, difficulty in making shit happen to improve your situation, empowerment. This is where we're at. This sucks. Acceptance, right? Whatever. But I am going to take the bull by the horns and live my life. Let me take a few. I'm going to try to wrap this one up around 30 minutes because I'm here at the house and the kiddos are here and hang out. But let's see what some folks are saying. Evan Kilpatrick says you can wield government power to manipulate tech industry. Yeah, I hear that, but I'm not a fan of wielding government power. It's like the Ring, right? He's watching on Facebook. Old school Evan there. Jerry Salem says black folks need to quit pretending to be victims. Wow. Well, this guy goes ahead and identifies a racial group. I don't know. Like, I think there's individuals that act as victims. I don't like to collectivize entire groups and generalize entire groups because there are many African-American people that are most definitely empowered. Oprah Winfrey always comes to mind. Like, I'm not a fan of her politics. She's like a big insider and stuff too, but she was like abused as a child, had a totally broken home, and now this woman rose to a billionaire, right? So it's not that really the color of the skin. There are circumstances in life, in culture, that can affect, right, that, the difficulty, the struggle, but everyone ultimately can rise up besides the color of their skin. So I don't really appreciate the comment, old Jerry. Double Down says, the thought of someone forcing me to take vaccinations makes my stomach makes me sick to my stomach. You're not alone, and there's a lot of folks. Double down watching on YouTube. But the point is, okay, take that sickness that you feel, that feeling that you feel is a signal to you that you need to do something. You need to prevent that from happening. You need to take charge. You know, when it comes to feelings and emotions and how we feel, we can also be victims to our emotions. We can be servant to our emotions. That's a victimhood mindset and paradigm. Or we can flip the script and we can be empowered and in control of our faculties and our path and our destiny. And we can understand that emotions, even negative ones, are signals that are giving us information that we need to take action in order to change our situation, right? So just throwing that out there. Double Down also says, you're right on the money, John. I'm not going to lie, but I'm depressed, not from the virus, but because I'm a perfectionist and we live in an imperfect world. You know, there's perfection in the imperfection, right? I'm thinking of Jeffrey Tucker, where he's like, such a beauty, the spontaneous order of multiple people simultaneously coming up to the same traffic intersection without any traffic lights, and all of a sudden making it through harmoniously with no one being hurt or injured or any scratches on any vehicles. It's such a beautiful thing, right? That's the imperfection, but it's perfect in its imperfection. That's what I'm saying. All right, so let me just check in on D-Live real quick. We got 10 folks watching over there. We need the Trivium. Book in Spanish is badass. I guess he's talking about 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So, yeah, appreciate. Somebody says I'm really quiet. Hopefully that's just on the D-Live feed. Hopefully I'm sounding good. All right, again, this is the Live Free Now show. You can find me on the podcast. You can find me on the live streams if you follow me on YouTube or on Facebook. Let me knock out a couple more stories to reiterate my point, and then we're going to call it a night. Many of you know... Well, all right, here's somebody that's really inspired me and helped me to become more empowered. There's this guy named Grant Cardone. You can find him at grantcardone.com. This guy's focus is success and sales and wealth. He's the one behind the 10X rule. It's this great book, and it's a whole movement now, the 10Xers, essentially. My girlfriend and I are way into it. We went to this conference in Las Vegas, the 10X Growth Conference, saw Magic Johnson. We saw Brad Parscales, Trump's former campaign manager. John Travolta was there. Floyd Mayweather, all talking about their triumphs and their struggles and living the best life. But this guy, Grant, he's so on point. 10X rules, like 10X your goals, 10X your effort, 10X the time you put into your relationships, right? And just go all in, burn the house down, constantly throw logs on the fire. The guy is absolutely nuts. But he's got a story of empowerment. He lost his father when he was young, greatly impacted him. He struggled to find a fraternal figure to help guide him. He got mixed in with the wrong crowd, got into drugs, hardcore addicted for a while, tried to quit, couldn't quit. This is the story that a lot of people go through. Finally, his rock bottom was when his drug dealer came over and was trying to rob him. So he tried to hit a plate over his head and he ended up getting beat with the butt of a firearm, of a pistol, all bloodied up, all crazy. His mom was so sad about that. And then he's like, I'm never going to do it again. He ends up getting drugged up again and falling back in that same pit. His mom essentially disowns him. She's like, don't come around here anymore. You're trouble. And that was his rock bottom. That was his eye opener. So what does he do? He just leans heavy into car sales. And even though he hated car sales, he decides, I'm going to be the best at car sales. Started making his way sales trainings. And then he essentially blew up. Huge on Twitter. He does property, real estate investment, has this huge Cardone fund. The dude, if you include his fund, this apartment real estate investment fund, it's worth over $1 billion. And so he flipped the script. He didn't stay in a state of victimhood. He became empowered. Now he flies in a private jet. He's not going to have to worry about our vaccine problem, right? He's got an amazingly beautiful, successful wife, 2 amazing children. He brings them with him on all these trips, and they're in the private jet with him. Really super cool guy. Perfect example of empowerment. Strongly encourage you to check him out. When I was thinking about him and his story, guess who popped into my head who has a very similar story? Derek Brose of the Conscious Resistance Network, somebody I've known for a decade now, really good friend of mine, confidant, associate. We're doing a lot of great work. He's doing a lot of great work, and I'm so in awe of this guy. He has a similar story to Grant. He had addiction in his family, right? In his lineage, in his blood. And he struggled with addiction himself. and got addicted hardcore to meth. You can find it on his website. I think it's derekbros.com, but he shares this story in detail too. It's really powerful. And he got addicted to all sorts of drugs, experimenting all with these when he's young, and then leaned heavy into them. And he ended up in jail, or maybe it was prison, but it was jail in Houston for many years. And in that time, right, he could stay in victim. I'm a victim of my circumstances. Grew up with my family struggling. I'm going to struggle. The world's all crazy. I'm a pissed off young guy, right? I'm in jail now. This freaking sucks. I'm going to have no opportunity. But instead, he decided to be empowered, and he started meditating and focusing on himself. And this is when he was exposed to this other way of viewing the world, right? Kind of peeling a layer back and not just being a non-playable character, but understanding that there's some crazy stuff going on in this world. And did he dive deep into conspiracy and get all depressed and weird, right? And just talk about the problem? No, he became empowered, and he started sharing solutions real early on. Fast forward, now the guy is in total control of his life, and he lives the life of his dreams according to his own ends, according to his own path. He's in Mexico. He's like, US ain't doing it for me. Rather than being a victim and complain about it, I'm going to Mexico and start an intentional community. He earns a living sharing his gifts with the world. Cool ass dude. Derek Bros at the Conscious Resistance Network, consciousresistance.com, is another perfect example. Difficult circumstances, difficult upbringing, ends up addicted to drugs and in prison. How are you going to show up? The choice is yours. It's up to you to decide. Do you fall into a state of victimhood, further attracting that negativity into your life? Or do you step into a space of empowerment and learn from those struggles and use them to strengthen your resolve and propel you to levels you never thought possible? You know, a lot of the struggle, there's a lot of folks, especially like artists, think about musicians, folks that had a rough life, that had a struggle, and they lifted themselves out of it. There's so much character that's built in that. You can really do some amazing things. And everyone that we're talking to here, everyone that's listening, talking to you, everyone struggles to varying degrees, different areas. We have the power. You just really have to understand that, right? That's another thing Grant says. The first thing that you do when you decide you want to be successful is you make a decision. I'm going to be successful. That can apply in so many different ways. For the liberty folks out there, the first thing you do is make a decision. I'm going to find freedom in my lifetime. I'm going to enjoy liberty as a sovereign human being, right? In relationships, oftentimes only takes one tango, right? I am going to turn this relationship around. You make that decision. It starts with that decision. You have to believe it too, right? When it comes to success and wealth, I am going to make enough money to do all of the cool stuff that I've been thinking about my entire childhood and adulthood. You make that decision. You start with that, right? And everyone has the power to do that. And when you line up with that, this is the law of attraction, right? When you line up with that, when you focus on that, when you focus on your ideal self, whether it's fitness, health, your ideal situation, your house, your car, where you live, your ideal relationships, right? Achieving your goals, leaving a legacy. It's not just about making money. It's about how can you, like Steve Jobs would say, how can you ding the world? How can you impact the world in a positive way? It all starts with the decision, and we all have the capability. If you're feeling depressed or you're down or you're struggling, constant stress and anxiety, you make that decision. I'm not going to be somebody that's stressed out all the time anymore. I made that decision. I used to be wound up tight, man, and I would snap at my kids, always peaceful parent, never laid a hand on them. But there were some periods of struggle in my life where I was super snappy and definitely regretted the way that I would communicate with my kids and their mom, right? But I made the decision. That's not me. I don't want to be that anymore. Wasn't that always? I can go back to being the chill, fun-loving, easygoing guy. It all starts with a decision. It all starts with stepping out of victimhood into empowerment. And man, that's what it's all about. So thank you so much for tuning in on the stream. The folks that are watching live, thank you so much if you're listening to the podcast. If you feel inspired by this transmission, then I invite you to share it. I invite you to visit livefreenow.show so you can subscribe. So if this YouTube channel or Facebook channel gets pulled, you can still keep in touch with me there at the website. Sign up for the newsletter as well. We don't send a whole lot of emails, unlike with my Brave Botanicals company, which we do. But we will stay in touch with you and stay on top of things. Again, we talked about victimhood and empowerment. Two different ways to live your life, two different ways to show up in the world, two different ways to respond to circumstances in your life, even circumstances you don't have control over. You can choose to be a victim. You can wallow. You can feel defeated. You can be angry. You can feel slighted, right? And in turn, you're going to attract more of that straight up. It's like a law of nature, I tell you what. Or you can choose to be empowered. Same life circumstances, you show up in a different way, and you will be better able to create the life of your dreams. All right, live free now. John Bush, I'm signing out. Thank you so much for tuning in. Peace.